Her eyes snapped open right as the heart monitor let out a shriek. She yanked the oxygen tube away from her face, looked straight past the nurse, and croaked, "Where's Ethan? He swore he'd be here." Nobody answered. Her mother just pressed a hand over her mouth and broke down crying. Claire Bennett tried to push herself upright, but her body didn't feel like her own anymore. Heavy. Weak. Foreign. Two nurses hurried in. A doctor murmured something about staying calm, about motor response, about a miracle. But Claire only registered one thing: the empty space where Ethan should have been. Her husband was never late. Not for anything important, not through storms, not for their daughter's birth, not even for the anniversary dinner he'd once driven through a flood to reach, after she'd cried over a silly fight and he'd laughed and told her he'd swim across a highway before letting her fall asleep thinking he didn't love her. So where was he? What had happened? What happened? She whispered. The doctor stepped closer. "Claire, you were in a car accident." Her throat felt raw. "I know that. I mean, what's the date?" The room went unnaturally still. Her mother's shoulders shook harder. The doctor took a breath he probably should have taken outside the room. "It's July 20th. Claire swallowed. "What year?" Nobody wanted to be the one to answer. When someone finally did, the number didn't even sound real. 5 years. 5 entire years, gone in one sentence. She stared up at the ceiling as though it might contradict them. 5 years. 5 summers, 5 birthdays, 5 Christmases, 5 years of her daughter growing up without her. 5 years of Ethan supposedly sitting beside her bed unless he hadn't been. "Call him," she said, more forcefully now. "Call my husband." Her mother made a broken sound. Claire turned her head slowly toward her, and that was when dread replaced her confusion. Because there's a difference between tears of relief and tears of guilt. "Mom," Claire said, her voice thin and cutting. "Where is Ethan?" Her mother stared down at her own hands. "Honey, no." Claire's pulse spiked. "No, don't make that face unless something's wrong." "Where is he?" The doctor stepped back, sensing this had stopped being a medical matter. Her mother tried again. "You need to rest first." Claire's eyes went hard. "Where is my husband?" Her mother shut her eyes and, quietly, like a confession made in church, said, "Ethan isn't your husband anymore." Claire stopped breathing for a moment. The monitor didn't, it screamed on her behalf. She blinked once, then again. "What does that mean?" Her mother's voice cracked. "Things changed." "No." Claire shook her head, panic building fast. "No, changed how? Divorced? Dead? Missing? Don't say something like that and then go silent." Her mother stood so quickly the chair scraped the floor. "He's alive." Claire's chest loosened for half a second before tightening right back up. "Then why isn't he my husband?" Her mother's eyes flicked toward the doorway, and Claire followed her gaze. A little girl stood there in a yellow cardigan, clutching someone's hand. The girl had Claire's eyes. Claire's mouth fell open. Mia. Her daughter had been 3 the last time Claire saw her, chubby hands, baby curls, juice stains on her shirt nearly every morning because she refused to hold her cup with both hands like a reasonable person. Now she was 8. An older face, longer legs, guarded eyes. And the hand she was holding belonged to Claire's younger sister, Sophie. Sophie stepped into the room as if the air itself had turned to glass. She looked older too, tired around the eyes, beautiful in that maddening way pain sometimes makes people beautiful. On her left hand, catching the hospital light without mercy, sat Claire's wedding ring. Claire stared at the ring, then at Sophie, then at Mia. "Why are you wearing my ring?" Mia shrank behind Sophie's leg. Sophie's lips parted, but no sound came out. Claire's voice dropped to a whisper worse than any scream. "Why? Are you wearing my ring?" That was when Mia looked up and said, softly, innocently, devastatingly, "Mom." Claire flinched as if she'd been struck, not because Mia had spoken, but because the word hadn't been meant for her. The room seemed to tilt. "Get her out," Claire said. No one moved. "Get her out." Mia burst into tears. Sophie scooped her up instantly, and Claire didn't miss how the girl buried her face in Sophie's neck with the instinct of a child who knew exactly where safety lived, and that hurt worse than the ring had. Once the room emptied, once the crying faded down the hallway, once only the machines were left brave enough to make noise, Ethan finally appeared. He stopped in the doorway, and for a moment Claire watched shock, relief, and shame all cross his face at once. He had more gray at his temples now. His shoulders looked heavier. But it was him, the man she'd built a life with, whose name she'd taken, the man she had asked for first. She expected to feel love. Instead, she felt something cold. Ethan stepped closer. "Claire." She recoiled so hard the foreline tugged. "Don't." His eyes welled up immediately. It might have worked on her if she hadn't seen that ring on her sister's hand 10 minutes earlier. "You married Sophie?" He closed his eyes. That was answer enough. Claire let out one short, horrified laugh. "I was in a coma." "I know. You married my sister while I was in a coma." His jaw tightened. "It wasn't like that." Her anger flared all at once. "Then tell me what like that looks like." He looked wrecked and careful. That combination turned her stomach. "I waited," he said. "For years, Claire, I waited. I sat by this bed until the doctor stopped giving us hope. Mia needed a mother. She needed stability. Sophie was already helping out. One thing became another, and my ring ended up on her finger." He flinched. "Good," she said, leaning forward, shaking with the effort. "How long?" His silence answered before his mouth could lie. "How long, Ethan?" "After 2 years," he said. She kept staring. He looked away. "Not after 2 years. Earlier. Much earlier." A memory flashed like lightning behind a cloud, rain hammering a windshield, her phone lighting up, Sophie's name on the screen. "Come alone. I need to tell you what Ethan's been doing." Claire grabbed her head. Ethan stepped forward. "What is it?" She snapped, "Don't touch me." He froze. "Good." The days that followed came in fragments: pain medication, physical therapy, a mirror she wasn't ready for, the shock of the scar near her hairline, the deeper shock of seeing years etched into her own face. And every time the door opened, a new wound walked in. Her mother with casseroles and guilt, her aunt with pity dressed up as positivity, Sophie with careful eyes and folded hands like she was waiting to be sentenced, Ethan with flowers Claire asked the nurse to throw out. But the cruelest blow came on the 4th day, carried in on a crayon drawing. Mia stood by the bed, looking at Claire the way you'd look at a teacher you'd met once. "I made this," she said. Claire reached for it too fast, her fingers trembling. "Thank you, sweetheart." Mia didn't step any closer. The drawing showed a house, a son, a dog Claire didn't recognize, and a family of 4: Ethan, Sophie, Mia, and a little boy. Claire's throat went dry. "Who's that?" Mia answered with a smile, "That's Jack. He's my brother." The room went silent. Ethan had a son with Sophie. An entire other child had been born while Claire lay frozen in a hospital bed. Somewhere in all that lost time, people had smiled, bought balloons, cut a cake, passed the baby around, picked godparents, argued over names, taken family photos. A whole life had gone on without ever asking her permission. Mia brightened. "He can say dinosaur, but not spaghetti." Claire only nodded, because if she opened her mouth she would have howled. After Mia left, Claire didn't cry right away, she waited until the door shut. Then she folded in on herself so completely the nurse had to sedate her. That night she woke alone, disoriented, choking on old grief and fresh humiliation. A small box sat on the bedside table, her mother had brought it from storage, items recovered from Claire's car after the crash, a bent keychain, a cracked lipstick, an earring missing its back, and her old phone, dead and shattered but still hers. She turned it over in her hands as though it might pulse with answers. By morning she knew one thing with total certainty: the accident hadn't just been an accident, not in the way everyone wanted her to believe. Something had happened before the bridge, before the rain, before the impact. Something bad enough that 5 years later, Ethan still couldn't meet her eyes when she asked how long. Rehab was brutal. Her legs felt like they belonged to a stranger. Her balance vanished without warning. Once she managed 6 steps with the parallel bars and nearly fainted from the effort. Another day she hurled a therapy ball across the room because her right hand wouldn't grip the way her brain remembered. Still, she kept going, not out of bravery, but because rage is useful. Every time she wanted to quit, she remembered Mia calling Sophie Mom, like the word had never belonged to anyone else. In the second week, Sophie came alone. Claire was by the window, practicing standing without swaying. "You shouldn't be here," Claire said. Sophie shut the door behind her. "You deserve answers." Claire laughed bitterly. "That's generous of you." Sophie didn't defend herself, which somehow made Claire angrier. "How long?" Claire asked. Sophie looked down. "Before the accident." There it was, clean, cruel, finally out in the open. The room seemed to shrink. "How long before?" "A few months." "A few months," Claire repeated. "You slept with my husband for months, and then held my daughter's hand at my hospital bed." Sophie started crying. Claire hated that too. "It didn't start the way you think. Please don't insult me while you're confessing." Sophie wiped her face. "You and Ethan were barely speaking. He said you were already done, that you just hadn't admitted it yet." Claire spun so fast she nearly lost her balance. "So that made me as good as gone?" "No, no." "Then say it plainly." Her voice shook. "What exactly made it okay?" Sophie looked shattered. "Nothing. It wasn't okay." "Then why?" Sophie's answer came so quietly Claire nearly missed it. "Because I was lonely. Because he was kind to me when I was falling apart. Because I was weak. Because once I crossed the line, I kept telling myself I could step back before anyone got hurt." Her mouth trembled. "And then I found out." Claire went still. "You knew I found out." Sophie nodded. Another memory flickered, the text. "Come alone. I need to tell you what Ethan's been doing." Claire stared at her sister. "You sent that?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was going to tell you everything." Claire's face hardened. "At midnight, in a storm?" Sophie swallowed. "I panicked. You'd seen one of his messages pop up on my phone at dinner, I could tell. I thought if I reached you first, maybe I could confess before Ethan twisted the story." Claire felt dizzy. "Did he know you texted me?" "Yes." And he called you, over and over." Claire closed her eyes. Rain. Headlights. Her phone buzzing in the cup holder. "Did he chase me?" Sophie hesitated, and that hesitation said enough. Claire opened her eyes. "Did he?" "He drove after you." A cold wave rolled through her body, not because it proved anyone had meant to harm her, but because it proved chaos. Because somewhere between betrayal and panic, everyone had made choices, and Claire had paid for all of them with 5 years of her life. "Get out," she whispered. 3 days later, Claire learned her father was dead, not from a gentle family sit-down, not from careful preparation, but from a hospital volunteer who mentioned offhand, "Your dad used to read to you every Thursday, didn't he? We all missed him after he passed." Claire smiled automatically, then stopped, the sentence catching up to her halfway through. Her father had been the steady one. The man who never panicked, who taught her to drive, to sand a table smooth, and to walk out of any room where she wasn't respected. He died 2 years earlier from a stroke, after spending nearly every evening at her bedside, and she had missed all of it. The funeral, the flowers, her mother becoming a widow, the first holidays without him. Claire took the news sitting upright, eyes dry, hands flat against the blanket. Later, alone, she found herself whispering, "Dad," like a child waking from a nightmare too late for comfort. That was the first night Mia came to see her without Ethan or Sophie. The nurse had left the door ajar. Mia slipped in, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one bent ear. "I couldn't sleep," she said. Claire wiped her face quickly. "Hey." Mia studied her. "Are you crying?" Claire nearly lied. Then she remembered what 5 years of lies had cost her. "Yes," she said. Mia nodded as if that made sense. "Me too, sometimes." Claire patted the bed. "Come here." Mia didn't climb up, but she moved closer. "My grandpa died," Claire said softly. "I know," Mia said, hugging the rabbit tighter. "I miss him too." Claire smiled through a fresh sting of tears. "He loved you more than anything." Mia studied her for a long moment. "Did you know my moon song?" Claire blinked. "What?" "Grandpa used to sing it. He said you made it up." Claire's breath caught. When Mia was a baby, Claire used to pace the floor with her at 2 in the morning, singing a made-up lullaby about the moon getting lost and asking a window for directions. No one outside the family knew it. Claire swallowed. "The one that goes, 'Moon got lost on Maple Street'?" Mia's eyes went wide. Claire kept going, voice shaking. "Knocked on every shutter, asked the sleepy sparrows sweetly, 'Which roof hides my mother?'" Mia's mouth fell open. Claire continued, barely above a whisper now. Stars all laughed and pointed west. Night wrapped silver around her. Then the moon curled up by your little bed, because that's where love had found her. Mia stared at her like the room had shifted shape. "You really do know it," she whispered. Claire nodded. "I used to sing it to you when you wouldn't sleep." Mia looked down at the rabbit. "Mama sings it different." There it was, the word mama, meaning Sophie now. Claire felt the sting but didn't let it show. Instead she asked, "Can I tell you something?" Mia nodded. "No one can ever take away the fact that I was the one who sang it to you first." Mia didn't answer, but she didn't leave either, and that small stillness felt like the beginning of something. It also felt dangerous, because once Claire glimpsed even the smallest crack in the wall between them, she wanted more. She pushed harder in therapy, harder in piecing together her memory, harder toward the truth. A week later, an old cloud backup from her shattered phone finally loaded at the hospital's tech desk. One audio file had survived, timestamped the night of the crash. Claire listened alone. At first, just static and rain. Then Sophie's voice, crying. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. He said he'd tell you after Mia's birthday. He said you'd be angry but you'd survive it. And I was stupid enough to think that made me less awful." Claire's hands started shaking. Then her own voice, sharp and furious, "Stay away from my family until I get there." A car door slammed. A horn blared. Then Ethan's voice, faint through speakerphone, "Claire, slow down. Please, just pull over and let me explain." Then a scream. Tires. Metal. The recording cut off. Claire sat frozen after it ended. He hadn't pushed her off the bridge, but he'd built the road that led to it. That evening, Ethan arrived with takeout she hadn't asked for and hope he didn't deserve. She played the audio before he'd even sat down. He listened without moving. When it ended, the silence between them felt almost sacred. "You were going to tell me after Mia's birthday," Claire finally said. Ethan dragged a hand over his face. "I was trying to figure it out." "You mean trying to keep things steady long enough to leave safely?" "No. You told her I'd survive it." He looked up, eyes red. "I was angry. Unhappy. Lost. None of that excuses what I did." Finally, one honest sentence. He moved closer. "Claire, I never wanted this, not the crash, not your coma. But you wanted her." He said nothing. She nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." He sank into the chair. The truth is, by the time you found out, our marriage had already been broken for longer than either of us admitted. Claire laughed in disbelief. So now you're blaming me for your affair. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying we were broken. We were. Those two words hurt worse than the betrayal itself, because betrayal at least acknowledges there was something worth betraying. Broken sounded convenient, disposable. Ethan rubbed his eyes. You were always gone, Claire. Even when you were home. Your projects, your deadlines, your phone at dinner, your exhaustion, your distance. She cut him off with a look sharp enough to finish the sentence for him. I was building a future for us. And I was drowning in the present. She stared at him. There it was, the coward's confession. Not I loved your sister. Not I destroyed our family. Just loneliness dressed up as justification. Claire pointed at the door. Get out. He stood, but before leaving he said one thing that stayed with her all night: Mia loves Sophie. If you turn this into a war, she's the one who loses. That line nearly broke her, not because it was wise, but because it was true. And truth from the wrong mouth still cuts. For 2 days, Claire considered walking away from the fight entirely, signing whatever papers would make things easiest, letting Mia keep the only version of stability she remembered. Maybe motherhood wasn't about biology. Maybe it was about continuity. Maybe waking up didn't give Claire the right to tear apart a child's world just because her own had already been destroyed. Then her mother brought her a letter, written in her father's hand. He'd written several during her coma, hoping she might read them one day. In the last one, dated 6 months before his stroke, one line stopped Claire cold. I should have told you sooner what Ethan was doing, but I was foolish enough to think time would expose him without taking anything more from you. Below that, another line: when he came asking about divorce while you still hadn't spoken a word in 18 months, I saw exactly what kind of man he was. I'm sorry I ever let him into this family. Claire read that sentence 5 times. Divorce papers, while she lay silent in a hospital bed. Her next breath felt different, not softer, clearer. This wasn't just about lost love anymore. This was about being erased while she was still alive. The confrontation finally broke open at Mia's 9th birthday. Ethan and Sophie hosted it at the lake house Claire had designed with her father. White lanterns strung along the porch, pink lemonade in glass dispensers, kids running across a lawn Claire had once measured barefoot with a tape line clenched in her teeth. She arrived leaning on a cane she despised, with a spine made entirely of refusal. The party quieted the moment people spotted her. Some smiled too brightly. Some looked away. A few whispered. Public humiliation has a sound, it sounds like politeness stretched too thin. Ethan strode toward her. You should have called first. Claire smiled without any warmth. It's my daughter's birthday. I figured I'd risk being inconvenient. Sophie appeared behind him, pale. Mia spotted Claire and froze. For one terrible second, Claire thought she might bolt in the other direction. Instead, Mia walked over slowly, surrounded by watching adults and half-finished lies. You came? Mia said. Of course I came. Mia twisted the hem of her dress. Are you staying? Before Claire could answer, Ethan cut in. Just for a little while, sweetheart. Claire's still recovering. Claire looked at him, then at Mia, then crouched as far as her leg would allow and said gently, I'm staying as long as you want me here. Mia nodded once. Then, in the bright, cruel middle of her own birthday party, she asked the question every adult there had been trying to dodge: why didn't you come back for me? Every conversation stopped. The wind moved through the trees. Claire felt every eye land on her, waiting to see whether she'd choose ego, anger, blame, or the truth. Her lips trembled. She reached for Mia's hand. I was trying, she said. Every day. Even when I couldn't open my eyes. Even when I couldn't move. Even when no one knew if I'd ever wake up, I was trying to get back to you. Mia's face crumpled. Claire kept going, her voice breaking now. I didn't leave you on purpose, and I will spend the rest of my life proving that, if you'll let me." Mia burst into tears and threw herself into Claire's arms. Claire nearly toppled from the force of it, but she held on. She held on like she was pulling herself up out of 5 years underwater. Behind them, nobody breathed. Then Sophie spoke, not softly, not privately, but right there in front of family, neighbors, and children pretending not to listen. "She's telling the truth," Sophie said. Ethan turned. "Sophie, no." Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "No more half-truths." She looked at Claire, crying openly now. "She found out about us before the crash. It didn't start years later, it started while they were still married. I texted her that night. I asked her to come. Ethan called her, chased after her when she drove off." Sophie's breath hitched. "And after she didn't wake up, we told ourselves we were building a home for Mia. But part of it was selfish. Part of it was guilt. Part of it was just wanting the life anyway." Ethan stared at her like he'd never seen her before. Maybe he hadn't. Mia slowly pulled back from Claire's arms and looked at Sophie. "You lied." Sophie's face broke. "Yes." That single word did more damage than any scream could have. Ethan stepped forward, furious now, his image cracking in public. "This is not the place for this." Claire rose carefully, one hand braced on the table. "Actually," she said, her voice steady at last, "it's exactly the place. Because this was my home before it became your cover story." Nobody moved. Ethan looked around and finally saw it. The tidy little narrative was gone. The patient wife who never woke up. The grieving husband who did his best. The loving sister who stepped in. All of it, gone. All that remained was what they had actually done. Mia backed away from everyone and ran into the house. Sophie went after her, but Claire caught her wrist. "Let me." Inside, Mia sat under the staircase, knees pulled to her chest, birthday crown crooked on her head. Claire lowered herself beside her with painful slowness. Mia didn't look up. "Do I have two moms?" Claire swallowed the ache that question brought. "You have one mother who gave birth to you and loved you before she ever saw your face," she said quietly. "And you have one woman who raised you when I couldn't. Both of those things can be true." Mia finally looked at her. "Do I have to pick?" Claire closed her eyes for a second. This was the impossible choice, the place where bitterness breeds more bitterness in children. When she opened her eyes again, they were full but steady. "No," she said. "You never have to choose love like it's a side in a war." Mia started crying again, softer now. Then, so quietly Claire almost missed it, she whispered, "Can I call you Mom too?" Claire's whole body seemed to give way at once. Not collapsing, just surrendering to the weight of grace arriving after so much pain. She kissed the top of Mia's head. "You can call me anything you want," she whispered back. "I came back for all of it." Months later, the lawyers did what lawyers do: custody filings, statements, mediation. Ethan lost more than he expected. Sophie left him before winter, moving into a small rental across town with Jack, carrying guilt like unpaid rent in her chest. Nothing wrapped up cleanly. Real life rarely does. But some things did turn out true. Mia started spending weekends with Claire in a sunlit apartment filled with resistance bands, cold forgotten tea, and the smell of cinnamon toast on Saturday mornings. Sometimes Mia still cried for her old routine. Sometimes Claire cried after she'd gone to sleep. Sometimes Sophie dropped Mia off and lingered awkwardly in the doorway, and the silence between the sisters felt like a wound learning not to reopen every time it was touched. Healing wasn't beautiful, it was repetitive, humbling, slow. But one night, after Mia fell asleep on the couch with her head in Claire's lap, half humming the moon song under her breath, Claire looked out the window and finally understood something she hadn't been ready to grasp the moment she'd opened her eyes. The man she had asked for first was the one who'd helped break her life apart. The people she'd fought for afterward were the ones who helped her rebuild it. And sometimes the cruelest awakening isn't opening your eyes after 5 years, it's realizing you should have stopped begging for the wrong person long before the darkness ever started.